Welcome to this Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. Yeah, I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and today, we're beginning our March Madness. That time of year where we watch some college basketball and everybody's making their brackets. And even though we do our own brackets from time to time, we decided that this year we're going to change up March Madness, and we are actually going to put two similar, in this case, two TV shows against each other. And at the end of the month, we are going to decide which one is, you could say, the best. I think more we're looking at which one made the bigger impact. And today we are starting it off by looking at what led to the creation and ultimately the premiere, which we will talk about next week, of Smallville. And joining me in this discussion is our dapper Southern gent, Blake Fowler. How are you, Blake?
Laramy, I'm doing fantastic and excited to be a part of March Madness. I never made it on a college basketball team, so this is as close as I'll get to participating in the tournament.
Yeah, no, basketball wasn't my game either. No. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about that Smallville aired at, I think, just the exactly right time. It was a moment in history, and it was unfortunately a tragic moment as well. And I do believe that it was perfect because at the time the world needed Superman, in my take. So let's set the stage a little bit. So it's the late 90s, and we have the WB network.
Man, I miss the WB. I'm not gonna.
I was about to say, what are your thoughts of the WB network?
I did enjoy the WB. Okay,
I did as well. I mean, even the kids' WB.
Yeah.
That was...
Like, at one point in time, they ran the Batman, the animated series stuff, too. And, like, you got to see some of that on there. And, no, it was a good channel. What is that? The CW now, right? Is that...
Eventually, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, WB merged with UPN.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's what led to the CW. And that happened during the run of Smallville. Smallville was one of the few shows that actually transferred from WB to the CW. But yeah, WB, I mean, of course, I'm also a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep.
That was a WB show.
Yep.
I didn't watch it, but Dawson's Creek was probably their biggest show, I would say. And clearly the WB network was the network for the younger audience, the teens and the 20-year-olds.
I can certainly say that. I was never big into Buffy, but my brother and a couple of my cousins were, and that was like, you talk about a moment in time. Like, that was a show that captured a wide audience, and I think along with Smallville, probably catapulted the WB/CW into the superhero station that it kind of became.
Yeah, man, this taking me back. We got to focus though.
Sorry.
So that's what's going on television at the time. But also, as we approach the end of the 90s and into the 2000s, the comic book movie is starting to make its go. Of course, we've talked about how Blade is kind of the one that got the movies that we have now going. Yes, we had Superman 78. Yes, we had Batman 89 that are just iconic, and they are the grandfathers, but I do still stand by that it was Blade that really gave it the final push.
Yeah, agreed. That was one of those things where Batman Returns had been 1992, and you hadn't had anything for a little while. So Blade, and then followed, was it followed by Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man?
Well, X-Men first.
X-Men, and then, okay,
so
there you
X-Men, go. Yeah, X-Men was in 2000, and then Spider-Man was 2002.
Yeah, I just remember Blade being out, and I was a little too young to be able to like watch Blade knowingly with my parents' permission. Had to kind of like sneak it from the video store and watch it. But I remember X-Men and then Spider-Man and just the I don't know. It was like all of a sudden superheroes were not for comic book nerds, quote unquote, anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you'd still say, Superman 78 has some camp to it. And then Batman, walked the line between dark and gritty,
Definitely.
but also very cartoonish. And then as soon as Schumacher took over, it went full campy and
yes, yeah.
cartoonish.
Let's don't.
but yeah, we now had comic book movies that could tell, dramatic, serious, character-driven stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something that, it wasn't just for kids anymore. You saw adults lined up waiting for these, adults without kids lined up waiting for these movies. And I think where we're heading with this is like Smallville was able to cash in on a lot of that, so to speak.
Yeah. And so there's all this good happening. Unfortunately, in 2001, something very bad happened. Of course, everything changed on that Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001. And we're not going to go into depth about what happened. Everyone probably knows what happened, I would assume, that's listening to this. But the world needed hope. They needed stories of resilience. They needed something to lift their spirits. They needed to believe in doing the right thing. And that right there is exactly why I have always said and will always say, at this point, it was the perfect time for the world to need Superman.
Yeah, I think you've got the events of 9/11 occurring, which we're alluding to, but you've entered a new century. And everybody will recall the uncertainty heading into 2000s, what's going to happen, where are we going, what are we looking for? And Superman has always kind of been that beacon for new hope, for, renewed hope in things. And we were on the cusp and then in the midst of very uncertain times, and Superman's his whole deal is leading the way, is presenting hope. And so I think you're absolutely correct in that the show appears at the exact right time for the people who are looking for that direction, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, the show debuted, and again, we're going to talk about the pilot episode next week, but the show debuted just barely 1 month after 9/11. It was October 16th of 2001.
Wow.
But I totally agree, because it wasn't just giving us Superman. I mean, really, they didn't give us Superman. They gave us the story of Clark Kent learning to be Superman, which is him going through the trials and tribulations of being a teenager that's all of a sudden developing these abilities and choosing what to do with them. And I think it was just so perfect at that time. Because he wasn't in the Cape.
Yeah.
They had the whole rule of, no flight, no tights when it came to this show.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And yeah, but it was the origin story. He had just learned, he just learns about his background, and the show was a story of how does someone with this power rise above the challenges. How does he deal with moments of when he needs to do the right thing, which they do right off the bat in the first episode, which again, we will talk about next week. I'm just going to keep plugging that we're going to talk about that next week. But they didn't give us Superman. They gave us Clark Kent. They gave us just he's an alien, but they gave us the quintessential American boy.
Well, I think in my limited knowledge of Smallville, I'll be as transparent about that as I can. But
yes, we will go ahead and reveal that Blake has never watched Smallville.
Never watched Smallville. But I will say this. I had plenty of people who were into Smallville, talked about Smallville. This was before the internet, but you're at school in my case, and people are talking. And I think understanding what I understand, here's what makes that work even more so. You're right. He's never Superman, at least not to my understanding. Like, no cape, no tights, you said. But you talked about he's becoming a teenager. He's developing these powers. Every teenager is going through that phase of change, of figuring out who they are as a person, of making decisions outside of their parents, having their own moral compass start to develop, and what they're going to do with the things that they can do. And I think grounding it in such a way that makes it relatable to teenagers and even young adults in their early 20s. That's what hooked people, was the storytelling, not the superhero aspect.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what it was. Here, like I said, he was the quintessential American boy. He's going through everything that teenagers would go through, but he's got this extra added pressure of the fact that he's got these powers. He's establishing this moral code, which, oh my goodness, they do such a great job with Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent being the example that Clark needed to establish that moral code. And yeah, it was just absolutely the perfect time for this. So let's get, you were interested in the no tights, no flights. Did you not know that?
No, I had no clue.
Yeah. So when Alfred Goh, or Gal, however you pronounce his last name, and Miles Millar, or Miller, pitched the idea of the show, actually they came up with the idea for the whole series.
Okay.
They didn't stay with the show for the whole 10 seasons that it ran, but they came up with it, and their main rule was no tights, no flight. They did not want to have him jumping straight into being Superman. They wanted him to explore his humanity.
Okay.
And they felt you'd ruin that if you just got this guy, he can just fly around. And
it does lose some of the shine on the whole teenage boyhood thing.
And like you said, it's not, they weren't focused on the superhero aspect as much as they were, the personal stories.
Correct, yeah.
And so you have, if you had him put on a super suit, all of a sudden it's a superhero story.
Correct.
You lose some of that. But it was the production company of Tolan Robbins, which is Mike Tolan and Brian Robbins, who wanted this show to come to television. Are you familiar with these two guys as producers?
No, I'm not. No. Who?
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, okay.
Because
okay.
they pretty much created your childhood on Nickelodeon. These are the guys behind all that: Kenan and Kel, The Amanda Show, Cousin Skeeter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so absolute legends then.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Brian Robbins was actually the president of Nickelodeon for, I don't know if he still is, but I think he became the president in like 2018.
Okay.
And he might still be the president. I think he was even the guy behind like Paramount Plus becoming a thing.
Some people would say that's a good thing. Others maybe not so much. But anyway, if you're a Paramount Plus fan, sorry about that.
And for those of you who are a little bit older, you might know this, that Brian Robbins was also, I don't remember the name of the character. I probably should have looked it up. But he used to be one of the students on the television show Head of the Class.
Oh, vaguely
he was one of the main
remember
characters.
Head of the Class. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he was one of the main characters on that. So yeah, they were the ones that said, we want to move into this new realm of comic books, and we want to make a origin story. But their original idea was not Superman. They wanted to do Bruce Wayne.
Oh, wow. How the world would be a different place, Laramy, if that had happened. We wouldn't have had to go through Gotham, but that's a different podcast. You can go back and listen to how much David Mazouz really chafes me. But no, that would have been interesting. Did they have a story outlined all ready to go?
I couldn't find anything that other than they wanted to do a origin story show, and Warner Brothers wouldn't allow them to do it.
Is there a reason why? What?
Batman Begins.
Oh, coming up. I forget. That was on the horizon already.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty much, they had already started development of a reboot of the Batman franchise.
Okay.
And so they didn't want the crossover and confusion of two different Batmen at the same time.
Man, imagine a world where that happens.
I know, it's crazy. So yeah. So again, so here we have it. Now, I I'm going to ask you this since you were just bringing it up. What if their idea was what ended up being Gotham?
Okay. Gotham's bad just on a completely just 30,000 foot view. It's not a good show. It's a bad show. So I'm glad if that was what it was going to turn into, that wasn't the case. Good for them for taking Smallville, which to my understanding achieved both, critical and mass success throughout its run. So probably the right decision made, to be honest. Good for them.
Yeah. So I will say, I just looked it up. They had nothing to do with Gotham, so maybe it wasn't.
Good for them again.
Yeah.
Great call.
Gotham was developed by actually a British screenwriter named Bruno Heller.
Oh, okay. So, I thought it was developed by my night terrors, but I guess not.
So yeah. So no, that's not where Gotham came from. But do you think? Well, I can't really talk to you about that because you haven't watched Smallville.
No. But jumping the shark here, I'm gonna undertake that for you, Laramy. I'm going to do that for you. It will be a first for me. So I'm curious to see what Smallville is all about. I wish we need to start recording these on video at some point in time so everybody can see Laramy's excitement talking about Smallville. Like there is a childlike glow happening across the screen.
No, I do love Smallville. Tom, you know what? If I were to actually place Tom Welling in there, like Tom Welling would be up there with Christopher Reeve for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big words for a no type, no flight Superman.
Yeah. And I probably, I think I've said this before. I probably would put Jonathan Kent as my number one, or John Schneider as my number one Jonathan Kent.
Okay.
So anyway, it definitely wouldn't be Kevin Costner. But anyway,
just holding your hand out to no.
Yeah. Let's wait till we cover that movie. But we'll go ahead and end things for this one shot right here. So tune in next week when Blake will have watched the first episode of Smallville for the first time ever.
Oh man, historic moment happening, everyone.
And now that he knows that it was originally going to be a Batman series and then got developed into a Superman series, it'll be interesting to see what his thoughts were.
I will have many, no doubt.
Yeah. But of course, this was all about the creation, the timing, when the world needed Superman, because it arrived at a perfect moment when the world needed a hero. And yes, he wasn't quite ready to don the cape, but we were able to get a relatable story with strong character dynamics, and right off the bat you knew that this show was going to be something special. So we'll tune in next week when we talk about the pilot episode of Smallville. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.